I've always wondered if ghosts or entities can harm us. This happened when I was just a child. My grandfather had passed away, and I really never had any contact or relationship with him. I only knew him from photographs. My grandmother had passed away many years before, so when this happened, my mom, dad, and I moved into my grandfather's house. One day, I invited a friend over to spend the day and stay the night. It was a normal day until the next morning. My friend got up a bit earlier than me to go to the bathroom, and there, he encountered an older person coming out of the kitchen, an elderly man who said to him, "Come, have breakfast, and I've prepared it for you." My friend, a bit shy and mindful of what his parents had always taught him about not talking to strangers, ran back to my room, closed the door, and woke me up. He said, "Your grandfather is in the kitchen and told me he's prepared breakfast." I, not knowing what to say and a little bit nervous because I knew what this meant, changed clothes and suggested we go play soccer in the park instead. My friend agreed, although he mentioned he still needed to use the bathroom. I told him I'd go with him, but after that, we should head to the park. He asked why we didn't just have breakfast first, since my grandfather had said it was ready. I simply told him we'd eat after playing and that we should leave. I accompanied him to the bathroom, and once he was out, we went to the park to play. Once there, I realized that in our rush to leave the house, I had forgotten the ball. I was very uncomfortable about what had happened, and I think my friend noticed. He insisted he would go back for the ball, but I told him not to return to my house. I had to tell him what was going on. I said, "Look, my grandfather passed away a long time ago. What did the person you saw at my house look like?" My friend, very nervous, described an older person wearing a white shirt and gray pants. I asked if he remembered how he looked at him, and he only answered that he didn't feel any trust. I asked if he remembered the color of his eyes, and he said they looked very dark, almost black, and that his face seemed to be faking a smile. I confirmed that yes, it was my grandfather, but he had passed away a couple of months ago, and that I had seen his entity in the house before. I told him that my grandfather was not a good person when he was alive. He was evil, truly evil. I told him that my mom stopped having a relationship with him because he had strange beliefs. I remember the first thing my mom did when we moved into my grandfather's house was get rid of all the books and strange things he had in jars spread out in different rooms of the house. I also told him that since the day we moved in, that man has appeared to me 3 times, inviting me to play or have breakfast with him. When I say no, I notice how his expression changes. His eyes become darker and his face looks annoyed. On all these occasions, I've talked to my mom, and she always tells me, "Don't pay attention to him. No matter what he's saying, do not listen to him. Always tell me, and we'll see what we do." We believe he wants to harm us because he always used to tell my mom,
"My grandchildren are mine. They are for me. Always remember that."
Sometimes I've heard my mom tell my dad, without them realizing I was listening, that she believes my grandfather is offering us up to something demonic, that he wants to do something to us, because this man was evil in life, a very bad person. I asked my friend to please stay with me a bit longer while my mom came back home. As we returned, we stayed chatting on the sidewalk, and my friend looked towards the house, turned pale, and said, "He's watching us," from the house window. I just told him, "Don't look at him. Act as if you don't see him." And he said, "But there's someone." I just replied, "Don't let him fool you. He is not a person anymore." I never believed in demons, dark entities, or anything supernatural, but I experienced something when I moved to another country, and to this day I can tell you those entities, incubi, are real. I am originally from South America. I don't want to give too many details because I wouldn't like to reveal my identity due to the nature of the story. Only a few people in my life know this happened to me, and I prefer it stay that way. I know I can't give many explicit details about what happened to me, but due to the nature of these entities, I think it won't be necessary to do so. A few years ago, my brother got a very good job in the United States, and to take advantage of the fact that my brother was going to have to travel there, I took the opportunity to visit the country for a while and help him with his house and with the things he needed to settle down. My brother and I get along very well, and he was going to take advantage of my presence there to help him with those kinds of things, and I was going to take the opportunity to spend some time visiting the country. Once he rented his house, we didn't have money to buy beds, but we did have enough money to buy pillows and sheets to make a kind of bed on the floor that turned out to be very comfortable. We placed this bedding in the living room area, which later became the TV area, but that's how we initially laid down. We made 2 beds on the floor, lying down next to each other but with some space between us. One night as we were lying down, I felt like something lay behind me. I felt uncomfortable and said, "Stephen, move over, you're too close and you're not letting me sleep." And I threw an elbow. But when I moved my arm to throw the elbow, I didn't hit anything. My elbow went directly to hit the floor. It was very strange. I perfectly felt as if someone had lain down behind me and stuck to my body. When I turned around, I saw that my brother was a bit startled by my shout and the blow I had given with my elbow against the floor, but he didn't understand anything. He asked if I had had a nightmare or what was happening to me. I asked if he had snuggled up to me when he was lying down, and he answered no. It seemed like he had no idea what I was talking about. He mentioned that he was already asleep and I had woken him up. So I simply deduced that I must have been having a nightmare. The same thing happened the next night and the night after that. The same thing again. Then, on the 4th night, I decided to change the position in which I slept. I normally slept on my left shoulder, so I decided to sleep on my right shoulder. I thought it was my imagination, and somehow, every time my brother moved and was behind me, for some reason, I felt like someone was snuggling up behind me. So, after rationalizing it that way, I decided to change my sleeping position. To my surprise, this did not improve my situation, it rather worsened it. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I felt someone lay down behind me, stick to me, and start pressing on my abdomen as if it was spooning me with a lascivious intention. I noticed a not-so-subtle intention. I was terrified, and when I opened my eyes, I saw that my brother was in front of me, and all I could do was scream. And when I screamed, whatever was behind me disappeared. My brother, already upset because I hadn't let him sleep well for a few nights, asked me, "What is wrong with you? Why are you screaming?" I asked him if he hadn't seen that something was lying behind me. I told him it was touching me. He just told me to calm down and that he didn't understand if it was because of the stress or what was it that was happening to me, but that I was no longer letting him sleep at night and this was affecting his work. He asked me how we could solve this. I tried to explain again what was happening to me, and he just told me to stop saying nonsense. He said the plan was for me to be there to help him, but this situation was already causing him problems. Days passed and this situation did not improve. Rather, it got worse, so much so that I couldn't even last one more week before deciding to return to my country. I thanked my brother for having me there, but explained again what was happening to me and that I could no longer tolerate it. When I returned to my country, my room was now completely alone. Before I went with my brother to the United States, I used to share a room with my sister, but since then my sister had moved to the room that used to be my brother's, so now it was my turn to be alone in the room that I used to share with my sister. I arrived practically straight to my room to sleep, as I was very tired from the trip. As I lay down in my bed and started to fall asleep, I noticed a dark silhouette positioned behind me, beginning to approach. It lay down and started to hug me from the back just like it happened before when I was staying with my brother. But now there was a big difference. There was no one else in the room. I lost control of my body, went into sleep paralysis, and this entity began to overstep too much. Overstep completely. When I was able to move, the silhouette was no longer there. With tears in my eyes, I went to the bathroom to check myself. I had bruises and hand marks on my legs and wrists where this entity was grabbing my body, where it was pressing and hurting me. I began to seek help, trying to understand what was happening to me. I convinced my sister to let me sleep in her room, and this situation continued to happen. But when someone else was in the room with me, the attacks were less frequent. I felt so desperate about what was happening to me that in less than a month I had already moved out of my house, the house where I had lived all my life. The worst mistake I could have made was that one, moving out alone. The attacks weren't as strong when there was someone else with me in the room, and in this new house, I was completely isolated. After a while, resigned to my situation, thinking it would never improve and was something I had to live with. But one day, as I was walking down the street, a person approached me and said, "You need me. You need my help. I can see it in you. You need my help." They took me to a place that looked like a store. It was a place that looked somewhat strange, with a ritualistic atmosphere. There, they began to pass me herbs throughout my body and recite prayers. After this event happened, the same night my house was transformed, it felt different. I was finally able to sleep again, and I never saw that entity again.